Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. This is the second part of the video series where I take the Scheps Omni Channel and I mix a whole song with it using as my primary mixing tool. So in the first video, I talked about the plugin. I gave a quick introduction what the plugin does, how does it work, what kind of modules you have in the plugin, and also we listen to the song with and without the plugins and what difference it makes. And briefly, I just touched upon my mix bus chain, my mix bus processing, and how I mix in general into that mix bus. So if you haven't seen that video, I'm going to put a link in the description, and also hopefully there's going to be a pop-up link on the right hand corner, so you can click on it and watch it first and come back to watch this, where I am going to talk about the drums. I soloed out all the drums. Let's disable the plugins and see what it sounds like, just the raw drums. Yeah, it's a decent recording. So just a word about how I start the mix. As you can see, there is a clip gain here. It's minus 5.8, almost minus 6 dB. When I put the multitracks in, I noticed that my mix bus was clipping very heavily, which means I can't mix it like that. So I selected all my tracks and I pulled it down until my mix bus was clipping around minus 6. So that was the highest peak, and it was hovering around here in minus 6 dB on the master bus. And then I pull all the faders down. I have the Behringer X-Touch and the X-Touch extender. And I pulled all the fader down, and one by one, I pulled up the drums. I was starting with the overheads, so I pulled up the overheads fader, set it to a comfortable level where it doesn't sound too loud, too quiet, and I can hear everything clearly. And then I pulled up the bass drum, the snare drum, relative to the overheads. So the balance, the level balance between them sounds right to me. And then I put up the room, just blend the room mics into the drums as much as I want. Do I want really dry drums? Do I want some kind of roomy, beefy? So I found a kind of happy balance in there. And the toms, usually I just mix it in when the whole song goes, because kick, snare, overhead, and room mics, those are the most important element. And I have a hi-hat mic as well. I just use it to enhance the hi-hat image, so you can kind of pinpoint it out clearly that it's coming from there. And sometimes I have other spot mics like China, Ride, and I do the same as the hi-hat, just to enhance the overheads. And also we have this tambourine. I panned the hi-hat to the left, and I panned the tambourine to the right, because it's kind of very similar. The hi-hat and the tambourine, they have kind of the same function. So I didn't want to pan them to the same side, because it's going to kind of overlap. So if you have a hi-hat and the tambourine, just pan them opposite. It's going to give you more clarity. Okay, why do I have to set certain levels like this? First of all, because as I said, it was clipping. But the other thing is, when you open a plugin, it's going to clip and distort inside the plugin. So if I just leave the tracks as they were and just pull down the faders, of course, it's going to solve the problem here with the minus 6 dB. Because if I lower the faders on the tracks, it's going to lower the volume at the end of the master bus. But still, these things are going to be hot. And when I put a plugin in, it's pre-fader. So I don't solve the clipping issue inside the plugin just because I pull down the fader, because the plugin comes before the fader. Okay, so it's kind of a good practice to get a decent level on your tracks without touching the faders, and then you can build a much better balance using your actual faders. Now listen to the drums. I start the plugin switched off, and after a few bars I'm going to switch it on and off so you can hear the difference. For me, what I can hear is it gives clarity, it gives more weight, more punch, and just in general, just kind of pulls the drums together. It sounds more cohesive and a bit more in your face. Since this kind of this country rock, Americana, kind of folk rock kind of music, I didn't want to, deal with the drums like as I usually do with like heavy metal and death metal and stuff, because it's just, this music doesn't ask for that kind of treatment. So what did I do with the drums? The first thing, on the drum bus, there is a limiter, but I don't use it with the threshold to actually raise volume. What I do here is just to set the ceiling. The highest peak you can go, buddy, and everything above needs to calm down. So that's the reason I use this limiter, just to control the high peaks on my drums. So if you have a look, you can see what it does. Barely doing anything. It's just like half a dB gain reduction, just to make sure I don't send the drums, clipping. It's kind of a safety net. That's the only reason. So on the kick bus, we have the Scheps Omni Channel. I'm going to talk about the settings in a minute. So as you can see, we have two kick drums, actually. There is an actual kick in and a kick drum sample. So we have an inside mic and the sample. I'm going to solo the kick drum now. Let's take the plugin off. So this is what the original inside mic sounds like. Okay, and this is what the sample sounds like. Okay, and it just blended in. So when I deal with the kick drums, when I put a fader up, I also try to balance when I'm listening to the drums, like the overheads and the kick drum together. Then I try to find the balance, listening to the drums like this, with the overheads and the kick drum, to find the balance between the inside mic or outside mic, in this case, the inside mic and the sample. So when I put them together, this is the balance I got. And it's a nice punch. It has a nice punch to it. I feel the low end, it has enough weight. So I was happy with this blend. As you can see, I pulled the sample down like 7 dB. So that's the difference between those two kick drum tracks. So let's move on to the actual plugin. So what did I do with it? On the low cut filter, I made a 30 Hertz cut, 12 dB per octave, and I added the 2 dB thump. So let's listen what this thump does to the sound. It just adds some nice low end weight, low end body of the kick drum. I heard that there is some snare bleed, but it's so minor and it's so small, so I didn't use the gate. I didn't use the de-esser on this one. On EQ wise, I have a 3 dB boost with a resonance filter around 8K, and I have a mid boost, 3 dB, around 3 dB, at almost 3K just for the punch. And I carved out quite a lot actually. It's like 4 dB, around 300 Hertz. And the cool thing about this plugin, if you hold Control and touch any of these EQ knobs or gain or Q value knobs, you can solo out the frequency. So I'm going to show you right now. So I'm just going to play the drums. And if I hold Control and click on this, for example, so you can hear exactly the frequency that you want to boost or cut. So this is what I cut out. This kind of honky knocking sound. And I enhanced the low end like 3 dB. I think it's around 60 hertz-ish with this resonance shelf. But remember, because I use the shelf because I have the cut here below. So it doesn't boost the low end below 30 hertz. It just everything above 30 hertz and between 65 hertz. And it sounds really, really nice. So if I play it without the EQ, it sounds like this. And if I punch in, nice, much more clarity, much more high-end slap, and more heavy low end. I really like it. And for the compressor, I went for the fat compressor. You can see how much gain reduction I have. So the ratio, I put 3:5 attack. Actually, I think this is the original, what it comes is 3.5:1. The attack, I slow the attack down a bit, so in this way, I can let more transient come through the compressor. And I put the release very fast and just compensated with the gain knob here. So without the compressor, with it just adds a bit more fatness, character to my ears. Moving on to the snare. I did the same kind of treatment on the snare drum as well. I balanced out all the 4 snare tracks. As you can see, I pulled it down. We have 2 snare samples. One, I pulled it down 7 dB. I pulled it down 4. The snare bottom, I pulled it down really low. I pulled down the original snare top mics. So this is the blend, the 4 snare sounds, the original and the 2 samples. Let's bypass the plugin and listen what the snare sounds like. Now it's in. It just adds more sizzle, more high-end focus, and more punch. So what I did here, I rolled off everything below 80 hertz. I didn't use the gate, and I didn't use the de-esser. And then the EQ, there is a bit of like just 1 dB, because I didn't need a lot of this high frequency, because the samples had a lot. And instead, I added this kind of mid-band, almost 3 dB at 3K. I also pulled out a few dB at 350 hertz, 2.5. And I added like almost 6 dB for the low end or bottom end of the snare, around 200 hertz with the shelf. So if I bypass the EQ, it sounds like this. And if I put it in, yeah, it just has a bit more low and bottom end body. This is what I notice. So the same compressor as on the kick drum, the Fat 1176 style. And here is the same ratio as the original. And here the attack is kind of fast. So it's really clamping down. Maybe I should check it if I can get a bit more definition popping through if I increase it. Let's see. Yeah, I like it better here. Okay, so I leave it at 5 milliseconds. Let's slow down the release as well. All right, I like it better. Okay, so I'm going to leave it as it is, but let me just put it back to the music. Maybe it wasn't that good idea. Let's see how it sounds with the rest of the mix, because this is one more thing that I want to talk about when you're mixing. If you mix, you shouldn't just listen to the instrument solo. You should do it in the context of the mix. So let's listen to it. Yeah, I like it better. It sounds a bit tighter. So yeah, I guess that was the reason I put these settings here. Okay, makes sense. Let's move on the toms. I put them together. I treated them together. And let's find a place where we are playing the drums. Baby, let me be your baby, baby, let me be. Okay. So let's take the plugin off. On. Off. On. Yeah, it just sounds much better, more clear, more high-end attack, and more full body without the boominess. So I added some saturation, the odd saturation here, and pull down everything below 70 Hertz, 60, with a 12 dB per octave. And I added the thump for some low-end enhancement. And the EQ is just a bit of 2 dB at the high end. I added some extra clarity around 3K. And also I pulled down this kind of boxy, woofy, muffled sound around 270 Hertz and enhanced the low end around, I don't know, 100 Hertz maybe? Yeah, exactly. And the compressor, again, fat compressor. The fat, actually, this setting, the fat setting is really, really nicely working on drums in this plugin. So I just use this, put the threshold down. I kept the ratio as it was. Again, the attack, I think is the original settings as you open the plugin. So I didn't really change anything besides the threshold. So let's see what the EQ does. Yeah, a lot. Okay. So let's move on. Tambourine. Well, tambourine is not so important in my opinion, but let's listen to it. So I bypass the plugin. On. Yeah. So I cut a shitload of it. Everything below 800 Hertz is gone. And then we're doing this de-essing here. So this kind of annoying frequency. So if I solo out for you, you can hear this. It's kind of, I just don't like it. So whenever we have this hit, this spike, it just pulls down 3 dB dynamically. And then I added some high end, took out some boxiness, muffiness, and also, not if anything left after this, but just in case. And also, I just rolled even out more low end of it. So it just really the high end comes through. And just added a soft compressor. Just to tickle it, just to make sure it doesn't get, out of hand. Hi-hat, it's kind of the same story without the compressor, because a hi-hat and the tambourine has the same sonic characteristic. So it's a very similar treatment. I use the de-esser. I rolled off everything below 300 hertz here. A tiny bit of high-end shine. I pulled out a bit of annoying frequency around 3K. And also I pulled out a lot of body around 350 hertz. And that's it. On the overheads, so this is what it sounds like without the plugin. And with. Without. With. So you can hear it's more, thinned out. I sucked out a lot of low end, with this below 200 hertz. And the EQ, just adding a bit of a high end shine, also pulling out something around 350 hertz. This kind of boxy stuff that comes from the snare and the kick drum and the toms, just to make it clean. And I use the soft compressor, just to tickle it, just to give a bit of a gain reduction on the high hits when the snare hit comes through. And let's go to the room mics. So without the plugin, it sounds like this. And when I punch in, without, in, so you can see how much darker it makes it. It makes it more, fuller, more, sounds heavier, right? It's coming from the saturation and the crush mode, because this saturation mode, it really darkens the sound. The more you crank it, the more crunchy and distorted it gets without the high-end fizz. So it's perfect on bass guitars and here in the room mics. Okay, so this is saturation. I'm just going to switch it in and out and see what it does so you can hear it. So this is without. And in. Without. In. It changes the character completely. So it's really cool. So I sucked out after that everything below 80 hertz, 90 hertz, because I don't need that low-end rumble mumble. And also I did some EQ, but very minimal. As you can see, I just took out this 350 hertz kind of muffled sound. So if I listen to this, so yeah, that is the frequency I'm taking away from it. I didn't feel the need. Usually I compress my room mics like crazy. I literally compress the living shite out of them. In this case, the saturation did such a good job to keep it in control. I didn't feel the need to put any compressor. It's crazy. This saturation only kind of replacing or making the need for a compressor completely obsolete. I really love it. This channel strip put together so well. I wish more people would give it a try and would work with it, because it makes your mixing so easy. Literally, just tweaking 4 knobs, adding saturation, crank the threshold, and you are 80% there. The sound, to get the sound what you actually want. So it's very, very easy to use. Highly recommended. Make your life easier, because sometimes mixing can be a bitch, a pain in the arse, especially when the recording is not, ideal. Thankfully, in this case, the recording was done very well. It's a very clean and very nicely recorded stuff. So I didn't have any technical issues to fix the recording. So yeah, that is the breakdown of the drums. As I said, it's going to be a mixing series. So the third part is going to be about the bass. Stay tuned for that, guys. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Take care.